Good afternoon and welcome to Politics in the Pulpit here on your hometown station, 98.1 FM and AM 1220. This is your holy host, the Bishop of Santa Clarita, back for another opportunity to talk about the two things that we're not supposed to talk about in public at all, religion and politics. And yes, they do indeed mix, and we're going to make a mix today, whether you like it or not. For those of you that might have listened in earlier, yes, that was me. You can go ahead and rub your eyes. I was on the senior hour, for those of you that are akin to seeing Barbara Cochran and Dr. Thomas Palucki together. But this morning, it was me. And so I think the funny thing that I mentioned this morning was about receiving senior pricing at McDonald's yesterday, and then ended up becoming on the senior hour this morning was actually kind of funny, a little bit ironic, I guess, but it's true. I got $1 coffee yesterday morning when it's normally about $3 and some change. So I don't know if the lady thought I looked old or not, but either way, whether I was offended or not, I'm glad I was able to only spend $1 on a cup of coffee. So that was pretty cool. But nevertheless, that was me today, and I enjoyed it very much. And so who knows? We'll see what happens in the future when it comes to that. Today, a little bit later, at the bottom of the hour, in fact, we do have a guest with us, Jennifer Lynn Kennedy. And she's going to give us a bird's eye view of what is going on with the whole Eaton fire and with the city of L.A., and is the city allowing folks to come back to their property, or are they not allowing people to come back to their property? Are they getting all COVID-y again with their restrictions when it comes to people's properties? So Jennifer Lynn Kennedy, of course, is someone who lives in the Pasadena area, the Altadena area, and so she's going to give us her perspective of what is going on with the whole Eaton fire. So we'll catch that at the bottom of the hour. What I wanted to do very quickly is just highlight something that I found out this morning that was actually quite good. Jonathan Hatami, who's a friend of mine and a friend of this station, he ran in the primary against George Gascon for district attorney here in Los Angeles. He came in third. Nathan Hochman, of course, is our current district attorney here in Los Angeles, and is insofar as the last few weeks are concerned, he's been doing a fine job, Nathan has. But I'm glad to say that District Attorney Nathan Hochman announced the promotion of Jonathan Hatami. He, of course, as I mentioned, ran for the top DA job in the March primary, but has now been named, as of last Friday, as Assistant Head Deputy of the Family Violence Division, which oversees the division's complex child abuse section. And this promotion represents a reversal of fortune for the prosecutor, who was at loggerheads with the previous district attorney, suing George Gascon in a case recently settled for terms that Hatami said he could not yet disclose, pending approval from the county's Board of Supervisors. So the fact is, Jonathan Hatami made national news back in 2020 when there was a Netflix documentary about the trial of Gabriel Fernandez. It was a lengthy trial for the mother of an 8-year-old Palmdale boy and her boyfriend, who were convicted in the child's murder and the result of years of torturous abuse. And so Hatami, who of course is a Santa Clarita resident, has handled thousands of child abuse cases during his years with the unit. Said he was also grateful for the honor from current District Attorney Nathan Hochman and for Hochman's leadership, which Hatami referred to as a night and day difference from Gascon. And again, I was not initially for Nathan Hochman, but I'm going to go with that assessment. That is correct. It is night and day, especially when you hear Nathan Hochman last week talking about those who are taking advantage of these folks who have lost property and coming in and looting and what have you. He came in and gave a full throttle defense and said, we are going to enforce the full brunt of the law should you get caught taking advantage of folks in their time of desperate need. And so glad for the providence that befell Nathan Hochman here. and we do not have an incompetent DA during these very, very trying times for the city of LA. One of the big debates that happens within secularism as well as Christianity is in the blending of the two when it comes to politics. And of course, this is why the show is called Politics and the Pulpit. And a lot of people say, well, there really can't be any blending between the two. Well, the problem is this. I'm going to just read a headline to you, and you tell me how this doesn't morph or run into moral obligations and moral discussions and spiritual issues. This is from Hot Air. Quote, Trump, the government will not fund genital mutilation of minors. And you say, well, that's not a very religious topic. No, you're right. You're not going to come to Freedom's Way Baptist Church and hear a sermon on mutilation of minors via their genitals. However, you might hear me complain about this. In fact, I have over the last couple of years, because if you were to ask me 15 years ago if the United States government of America should take taxpayer money in order to fund the mutilation of minors, I'm talking about people that are under the age of 18, folks. I'm not talking about 18 years and above. I'm talking about minors, folks. If you were to ask me 15 years ago, do I think that it is a good thing for the United States government to take taxpayer money and fund genital mutilation of minors, I would say you're nuts, and that would never happen. And then fast forward just a few years later, and that becomes a big, huge political topic. And so is a preacher like myself supposed to sit idly and not talk about something like this? When I come from a background that says you have males and females. I don't believe in 95 different sexes out there. I believe in males and females. And so when I hear that the current administration, the Trump administration, is now going to stop funding genital mutilation of minors, I say amen and bravo and hallelujah. I'm going to read a little bit of this. It says, with Trump in office for just over a week, and by the way, even though it's only been a week and 3 days, folks, it's amazing what this administration has been able to accomplish. Whether you like all the accomplishments or not, it has been swift, it has been quick, and I believe he's done so much more in just the last, just under 2 weeks than what has been done in a good way with the prior administration. But let me continue on here. It says, with Trump in office for just over a week, it seems the days of illegal criminals and DEI may be further behind us. Yesterday, we moved one step closer to, quote, protecting children. Donald Trump signed an executive order aimed at cutting federal support for gender transitions for people under the age of 19. The presidential action, dubbed Protecting Children from Chemical and Surgical Mutilation, aims to halt government funding for harmful transgender surgeries and drug protocols with regards to minors. And can I say something to you folks? A 7-year-old, an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 5-year-old cannot make these types of heady decisions. I mean, let's just be honest. They can't. Who knows how I felt at the age of 5? Maybe I felt like I was a girl at the age of 5. Thankfully, my parents just looked at me and said, you know, keep playing with your He-Man and everything will be fine. And it was. But the fact of the matter is, we're now living in a day when we're taking what a 5-year-old is saying and we're taking it very seriously. Or, I don't know if you've seen some of the videos that have been posted by some of the right-wing groups with parents who are trying to convince their younger kids that maybe they are a different sex. Those kids should not be strong-armed into believing something that they're not. And I wouldn't want to be one of those parents that try to feed into that notion that maybe they are, gender 55 on the list of 100 genders. I know that is the case. Let me just bring this up here to Jen, our board op here, who of course is a mother. And your kids, of course, can get confused from time to time, Jen. Maybe your daughter might think she feels like a little boy one day because she's playing with, a Ken doll. And maybe your boys think they're a little on the feminine side one day. But that doesn't mean that we now have this big, heady conversation about maybe they're one of these you take your choice genders.
Correct. And to simplify it, I would always kind of equate it with, when my son was 4 years old, he thought he was a fireman. He thought he was Superman for a while. He wanted to be a police officer. Same with my daughter. She thought she was a Disney princess. Were they those things in real life? No. And then the other thing, too, I think of if we're talking about medical choices and medical treatments for your children, we are expected to just go along with this and comply with any sort of gender
reassignment.
Correct. We're supposed to do that, but yet my kid, if it were up to them, they would never have a shot in their lives. Mm-hmm. Just trying to get my kid to the doctor for a simple flu shot. The 4-year-old at the time would throw herself on the ground. Okay, I'll give you ice cream and cookie and candies. Just go get the one shot.
I'll take ice cream, cookie, and candy.
And
I get it.
I get it. Yeah, I understandable. But that's my point. So I'm allowed and expected to maintain any sort of other medical treatments and get them to the doctor and send them to school. They don't want to go to school, but I am their parent and I am setting those standards for them.
And the other thing too, Jen, is think about this. Once this type of decision is made on behalf of the minor, even though technically they're trying to assume that the minor is actually making the decision for themselves, when in reality, the parent has to make this decision, or else there's no parental oversight. If these decisions get made and these surgical things occur and these medications get inserted into the bloodstream, these people will not be able to have children anymore. And again, there's a side of me that starts to get fueling into the whole conspiracy theory about repopulation of the earth, and whether or not there's too many people on the earth. And of course, there's a whole group of people out there that think we're overpopulated, mm-hmm. and we need to, diminish ourselves by a couple of billion people. And it's usually not those people. It's usually just average folks like you and I that need to go, not the real heady folks that are making all these high-minded decisions. But these kids, once they make these decisions or once the parents make these decisions for them, they're not able to have kids. You wouldn't have grandkids. Mm-hmm. And these things are not brought up, at least that I'm aware of, in these discussions. And then during the whole big debate in government a couple years ago when Chloe, I guess she had detransitioned, she was part of the whole mishmash with the government, trying to encourage the government to make sure that we protect women in sports. She came before Congress. Her name is Chloe. She's a detransitioned young lady, and she regrets all of these things and decisions that she had made, and actually kind of regrets the fact that her parents kind of came on board with this,
Yeah.
And she was basically saying, you don't know what is happening to these kids as they get older and realize, wow, why did my mom, why did my dad side with, the Frankenstein science of the moment, and now I can't have kids. My parents won't be able to enjoy being grandparents.
Yeah.
And this is irreversible.
Well, they're making, obviously, extreme choices, extreme decisions based on maybe what was a fleeting thought or a feeling that they didn't really know how to identify because they're a child.
Yeah.
And again, if you just strip it down to simplifying it, and it sounds silly, but kids don't want to eat their vegetables. Kids don't want to dress appropriately for cold weather. They want to run out in T-shirt and shorts. You, as their parent, are the kind of the guiding light of helping them to make proper choices and the right decisions, medical and otherwise. And then when they get to 18, if they want to do what they want to do, you're no longer, that's not on you.
Absolutely. If they want to live like pagans, they can live like pagans out from under our authority, right? Well, we've got Jennifer Lynn Kennedy that's calling in here. We'll get back to her at the bottom of the hour. But I wanted to just quickly say, I don't know how in the world I as a pastor, I as an individual who has the platform that I have, could somehow divorce biblical morality from this type of a story. And so I speak to these issues from behind the pulpit because I think these issues need to have moral clarity. And you know what? Maybe 15, 20 years ago, I didn't need to talk about this. But the fact is, I need to talk about it now. But I am so glad that we have an administration now that sees what is going on and has signed this executive order aiming to protecting our kids and making sure that our taxpayer money does not go to this kind of stuff. Just also breaking news, just on the side note here, Lee Zeldin has been confirmed for the Environmental Protection Agency. I'm not a big fan of the EPA, but hey, I'm all for clean water, I guess. But Lee Zeldin, I think, is going to be a cool head in this situation. For those of you that are watching on television today, we also saw Robert F. Kennedy being grilled for Health and Human Secretary, and so we'll see where that goes. I've got my doubts about whether or not he will be confirmed. I think he's got enough Democrats to hate him because he ran as an independent, having first run as a Democrat. And then also, I think there's just enough Republicans that are squishy, like Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins. When we come back on Politics in the Pulpit, we're going to talk to Jennifer Lynn Kennedy, who is going to give us a bird's eye view of what's going on with the whole Eaton fire. And we'll get to know a little bit about what the administration here in Los Angeles is doing right and what they're doing wrong when we come back on Politics in the Pulpit on your hometown station. All right, we're back here live on Politics in the Pulpit with your holy host, Pastor Jerry Cook, here on your hometown station. It has been almost 3 weeks since the devastating fires that have burned down a lot of homes in the Pacific Palisades, some property there in Sylmar, and of course all of the homes in Altadena with the Eaton fire, and of course a bevy of other fires that are still currently active in the state. We're thankful for the great weather we had over the weekend, where 1 week we had 70-mile, 80-mile-per-hour winds, and it was dry in terms of humidity, and then all of a sudden we had rain, and I had snow where I live, so it was definitely a big change of pace. However, we get all kinds of conflicting sources and news when it comes to what's going on the ground. Obviously, we can't get the straight poop, if you will, from the mayor of Los Angeles and some of our supervisors. However, we have someone on the line that I think can give us exactly what we need, a bird's eye view of what's going on, specifically with the Eaton fire. Jennifer Kennedy, of course, is a civil rights attorney. She's friends with a lot of good people in high places. And so, Jennifer, welcome to Politics in the Pulpit today.
Pastor Jerry, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here today.
Jennifer, give us your perspective from almost 3 weeks ago on January 7th, I believe it was, with this whole Eaton fire. You live in the Altadena area. Tell us about your current status and how things stand at the moment.
Okay, my Altadena is, I want everybody to know, is unincorporated LA County. It's not it's not part of the city of Los Angeles, and nor is Pasadena. Altadena is an interesting area where the boundaries are up and down and all over the place. And I happen to live in what I call the Florida or Alabama of Altadena, kind of in the lower southeastern corner. The horrible carnage that everyone saw, the streets and blocks of incinerated homes, that is more north and to the west of me, but it's exactly the places I go and live and shop, and my kids' preschools were up there, and all of our friends from school are up there. And it has been devastating to see. Everyone has seen the footage. It's just, it's a moonscape. It is an awful incinerated pile of ash up there. Down where I live, the structure fires were more inconsistently around me, and my street was spared. My home was spared. as we drove away and evacuated within 15 minutes of that fire, we really thought that we were leaving our home to be absolutely consumed by flames and would never see it again. So it was a great relief to come back the next morning and find it still standing. Right now, what's happening, I can tell you, is a lot of confusion and a lot of lack of communication, I would say, from leadership. I am now on many, many chat threads and Facebook groups and fire support, groups, and everyone is asking everybody else, do you know what's going on? Do you know what's going on? It seems to be there is not a single source of information that everyone can tune into to figure out what to do. That's one of the biggest problems.
And do you think that when President Trump came here last week and had the interview with Mayor Bass and some of the other officials, kind of putting her feet to the fire in terms of the timeline, she was saying, some of the people down the Pacific Palisades were saying, well, this was going to take 18 months for us to clear this and in order for us to get back to our properties. So I heard today that they're allowing some folks back into the Pacific Palisades for a time, but yet there's still a curfew. What are your thoughts on all that? Do you think that President Trump helped or hindered the process?
I think he absolutely helped by being here and making it very clear that we don't just sit back and, decide how we might move forward. We've got to help people do what they need to do for themselves. And the fact that he held Karen Bass, when he was saying, she said, well, we'll let them in about a week. And he was saying, I think a week is too short. People need to get moving. And I think that's accurate. There is an argument for, safety. Okay, does everybody want to stir up all the hazmat, particles and dust, or does everyone have to wait on FEMA? And you're really here with a property rights issue that if this is your property, I'm side with Trump. Let the people in to do what they will. And if the government wants to help and wants to assure that things are safe from a toxicity standpoint, then get out there and have a clear plan of what people should be doing and how the government's going to help. And that's what's missing. I can't tell you the number of chat threads that all I hear about is toxicity and people asking, have you had your home tested? I don't know what to do. What does your testing say? Everybody has different information. Everyone's confused. And a lot of parents are very worried about their children, where to send them back to school, and can they send them back to school safely? We need a lot more leadership and a lot clearer communication so people feel better about what's happening.
I can't help but feel ominous notions of COVID all over again when I hear some of this talk when it comes to it's not safe, we can't let you go back to your property. We know it's your property, we know you own it, but yet we as the government know better, so therefore, until it's safe, until we deem it safe, you can't go back. You need to wear a mask. All these things just remind me of some of that authoritarian, tyrannical grasp for power in 2020 and 2021. It almost seems like we're seeing a little microcosm of that here in Los Angeles after these fires. Do you think my train of thought is a little off there, or do you think that authoritarians like authoritarian power?
I think they love the power, and I think you are absolutely onto something. In fact, Attorney Julie Hamill was just on Twitter and Instagram the other day talking about how all of this emphasis on safety, right, it's the welfare of humanity is the alibi of tyrants, right? And as they drag out safety again and insist that the dust is toxic, the air is toxic, everybody's got to mask up again, it really does sound a lot like COVID. And unfortunately, what we see are a lot of people, once again, going right along with it. I'm telling you, I go about my basic day here in Altadena, Pasadena, where right now in my area kind of looks like nothing happened. And yet people are down here in the shopping centers and everything with their full-on N95s again. And that is alarming about, you all just came out of COVID and you're putting the masks back on. But coming back to communication, nobody knows. You hear these doomsdayers saying that, even the air even the air just in this entire city is toxic. Don't breathe it. And then you have the regular Joe on the street saying, I've got to get back to normal, and everything seems fine. It's really hard to know. But yes, I think this is another one of those grabs for power and also for land. And that is the biggest problem facing our Altadena neighbors up in the Northwest. We already have BlackRock knocking on doors, offering to buy the burned out lot.
Yeah, my big concern is when Governor Newsom and Mayor Bass and some of the other officials that are on the left, which is basically most of them, take the playbook of Rahm Emanuel and say we can't let a good thing go to waste, right? And so here we have this major calamity where all these homes and their private properties have been upended and burned down. And so now they're going to go into their leftist dreamscape and say, well, this is not going to look like the Pacific Palisades of 2 years ago. We're going to, we're going to come in and we're going to make a Jetson city here where, you're living on top of each other and all the stores are right here and you won't have to travel very far. Do you think that the leftists are planning, and again, I'm not trying to be conspiratorial here, Jennifer, but you have to kind of get into their mindset, and I think you understand this, that they see an opportunity here to rebuild their society in a leftist mold, and many of them on the left do not like the fact that we have property ownership. And what do you think their thinking might be when it comes to allowing the rebuilding process to go forward?
Oh, I think you're right onto something again, Pastor Jerry. For sure. It's the 15-minute city. It's the 2028 agenda. We've already heard Governor Newsom use that horrible word, reimagining. We're going to reimagine the Palisades. We're going to reimagine Altadena. And, our Board of Supervisors has already asked the state to speed up some housing, like to waive some of the housing permitting processes and speed up the process for rebuilding, except they want to speed those up to enable especially high-density residential. Everything that comes out of the state of California is pushing high density. They don't like single-family ownership. They tried to kill it with SB 9 a couple of years ago, which was going to take zoning away from the localities. They really, really do want to create those little cities where nobody really has to leave the boundaries and you don't have to go very far and keep everyone, like you said, in Jetsonville. And I'll tell you, the residents of Altadena for sure and the Palisades, from what I hear, they are all firmly against that.
Well, let's pray and hope that they remain on that position because there is no doubt in my mind that the governor would love to, quote, reimagine the Palisades. And, of course, we want reimagining to only stay with Walt Disney, not with the Pacific Palisades or Altadena for that matter. Let's talk a little bit briefly here before we go to the break, Jennifer. Thank you so much for joining us today. Again, if you're just joining us on Politics in the Pulpit, this is Jennifer Kennedy. She's a civil rights attorney. She lives in Altadena, and, of course, she's giving us a bird's-eye view of what's going on here. What do you think the evidence is on the cause for the Eaton fire? Is it Southern California Edison? Is there foul play at hand? Is it arson? Was there an arc from one of the electrical wires? What do you think's going on?
You know what? I wish I had a better feeling for that. All I can tell you is that all of those questions are in play. Number one, we did see the explosion at the base of that transmission tower, that 220 kilovolt transmission tower exploded. However, there's questions. Well, was it the wind, and did something get blown into it and cause a spark or an arc? Or was it somehow set by anyone? You hear a lot about arson over in the Palisades fire. You don't hear it so much over here in Eaton. All I know is that, within a week, we had at least 4 lawsuits filed. I'm sure by now there are maybe up to 15 or 20 lawsuits. And they're all blaming Edison for not turning off the power fast enough, that they should have known the winds were high enough, it was going to cause a problem, and they should have flipped that switch. So it's going to take a long time, I think, before anyone really has a definitive answer.
Yeah, I saw the video that was put out just a few days ago from that camera that was mounted at the gas station, looking at just below the electrical wires there, and how fast that fire went from the tree, and then got that whole area. Of course, with the winds blowing as fast as they were and as high as they were, it was a matter of time. My wife was actually driving from West Covina on the 210 freeway back home when the Eaton fire broke out, and she was just amazed at how quickly, because she was stopped on the freeway for much of the time, just how amazed how quickly that fire blew up. Our congregation, our church, is just across the street from where the Hughes fire broke out last week, and it is amazing to us how it went from 50 acres at 10:45 in the morning to 5,000 acres by 1 o'clock, 1:30 that same afternoon, and we didn't have quite the wind that you guys had on January 7th. So it's definitely interesting. So when we come back from the break, Jennifer, I want to talk to you about any recall efforts that you think are worth our time when it comes to Mayor Bass. And also, if you think that the Trump administration should have conditions when it comes to bailing out California, because if we keep this stuff up, we're going to have fires all the time, and the government's going to have to come in and bail us out as usual ad nauseum. And so obviously we need better leadership, so we're also going to talk about that with Jennifer Kennedy. Jennifer, thanks for joining us today on Politics in the Pulpit. When we come back, we'll ask those questions, and we'll see what Jennifer has to say. All right, we're back here on your hometown station. This is Politics in the Pulpit. This is your holy host, Pastor Jerry Cook. We're talking to Jennifer Kennedy, who is a civil rights attorney, also a resident of Altadena, and can give us a bird's eye perspective of what's going on there with the Eaton fire. We know that, Jennifer, it's about 75% contained, depending on, I guess, which sources we read. Can you explain to our listeners, and I hope you know this, but can you explain to our listeners what does it mean when they say the fire is 75% contained? Does that mean it's 75% out, or does that mean that the fire department has got a ring around this thing?
My understanding is, number one, that we are at 99%.
Excellent.
If you don't go to calfire.california.gov, you can see that it says Eaton is 99%. And yes, my understanding is they've got a perimeter. They have it contained, and now they're finishing on mopping it up. And in fact, in my area in Eaton, I'm still evacuated. I'm still displaced from my home, and right now I'm in a hotel, and it happens to be the hotel for a lot of the CAL FIRE firefighters. And they were telling me that their fire efforts right now are done here in Eaton, but what they're doing is shoring up the watershed. They're up there making sure that all those, the raised hillsides aren't going to be a problem with mudslides when more rain comes.
President Trump tweeted out on his Truth Social a couple days ago about water is coming to California, and from Northern California, and of course down into Southern California. What is that going to change in terms of the future of fighting a fire like this, Jennifer? And why did it take someone like President Trump to do what the feckless governor of California could have done easily?
A long time ago, because our feckless governor just is yet another Democrat in a long line of Democrats who value the Delta smelt over people, who value, virtue signaling over farmers and food, and who want to keep our water flushed out to the ocean by the, millions of acre feet every day instead of capturing it properly, instead of building the reservoirs that we, voted for. That has been really keeping us in a man-made drought in the state of California, and it was absolutely refreshing to see Trump demand that they turn the water on, and here came the water. It was as simple as that. Now, for California to continue rebuilding and changing our emphasis on water, we're going to have to change the leadership.
Yeah, well, no doubt about that, because there are definitely some political ramifications of these fires, and the problem with our conservative friends is, I believe, from my perspective, Jennifer, is sometimes some of our conservative friends want to take too big a bite out of the pie. And we were talking a little bit about this off air. There's some recall efforts to get rid of Gascon, and I think you and I would agree he's a lame duck. He's going to be out of office in a little over a year and a half. I mean, that's a lifetime, obviously, for us here in California, to have Gavin Newsom for another year and a half. But the fact of the matter is, he's a lame duck. He's out. He can't run again. But Mayor Bass can run again. In fact, that's what her intentions are. What do you think are the political ramifications for Mayor Bass? Do you think she can actually get out from under this huge boondoggle and the trip to Ghana and all those kinds of things?
I don't know that she can recover. I fully agree with you that Newsom would not be a good use of time and resources and manpower to try to recall at this time. We had our chance. But Karen Bass, this was absolutely unforgivable, what she did to the city in this way and this mismanagement. And people are talking about how Karen Bass really viewed this mayorship as decorative, as, you know, another feather in her cap and a photo op opportunity, and really was using it as a stepping stone. And she's off in Ghana when we've got rising winds, and we know what happens in California during windstorms, and she's off, playing the diplomat. This, I think, is career killing. And I think we should have a recall of her because everything she has done as mayor has not been in the best interest of the citizens. And, before the break, you mentioned conditions on federal funds coming into California. And I'd say we start with Mayor Bass and we tie any funding to the immediate reinstatement and compensation of our first responders, our firefighters and our police officers who were terminated over the COVID vax mandates. And they really crippled the department. Of course, it started with Garcetti, but Bass continued it to this, really, even as late as August of 2024. They were firing firefighters under that vax mandate. That needs to be addressed, and they need to be held accountable.
Yeah, it's amazing how we are still living in the wake of so many bad decisions made under COVID, whether those decisions were intentional or not. Here we are, and we need to address the fact that, there were so many that were let go for simply not wanting to take the vax, correct?
That's right.
And not only that, but also our police department as well. But go ahead, Jennifer.
Oh, no, I was going to say not only terminated, when it came down to it, hundreds, like in the fire department, hundreds were immediately put on unpaid suspension. And over in LAPD, immediately our officers, we had decorated veteran officers like Michael McMahon of Roll Call for Freedom, immediately terminated for not taking that shot. And what they did in the fire department and the police department, they really kneecapped themselves. They absolutely broke those bonds of brotherhood that you need in paramilitary groups like the police and the fire. They ruined morale. They killed their own departments by insisting on that shot, number one, that people didn't want or had religious objections to. And also they created dissension in their own ranks and caused all this fighting amongst the rank and file about whether you should take it, whether you shouldn't, blah, blah, blah. They absolutely, in the name of public safety, which it had no effect on public safety, they really killed their own really once great departments.
I really think we should change conspiracy theory to spoiler alert, because I want you to put your tinfoil hat on just for a minute here. I got a text from a friend of mine. I'm going to ask you this question.
Okay.
He says, quote, "The fire that burned was very hot, obviously. Hot enough to melt cars, but not to burn trees." And I've been hearing stories of, a car melting because of the heat, but yet a tree that's just within, 2 or 3 car lengths away wasn't harmed at all. I guess those kinds of mysterious things happen. Maybe there's a natural way to explain that. But yet, obviously, when there isn't any good communication coming from our officials, it does fan the flames for conspiracy theories, doesn't it?
It does, although I have something that doesn't really sound very conspiratorial, and it sounds rather fact-based. Over the years, they have been installing in homes these new smart meters, the new electrical meters that speak to the power agency and the power department. And they also have copper wiring now in most homes. And what I was reading is that these smart meters and their lithium batteries, when they get subjected to fire or high heat, they supercharge. They absolutely heat up and basically are sending pulses of this extremely high heat into the homes. And this is what one source I was reading, was saying that basically the homes were burning from the inside out.
Yeah.
And that's how they were catching fire. And that's how trees were then left standing as these homes were basically incinerating themselves.
Well, you heard it there first from Jennifer Kennedy. It is very possible for those things to happen. One last thing I wanted to bring to your attention. We know that Nathan Hochman came out pretty strong against those who would do price gouging and said that, you would be shamed. There'd be some public shaming and things of that nature. From your perspective there in Altadena, maybe not so much there, but maybe in the Pacific Palisades or in the broader area of West LA, are you hearing of or seeing any price gouging happening when it comes to rentals and things of that nature?
Actually, yes. As a matter of fact, it's been in the news, all over the news. They were really, jumping on this. A local realtor who has his own firm and everything was charged with gouging on the rental of a new property for a family who had lost their entire home. And the charge against him was that he, after inking the contract to rent, he raised it by 38%. And they complained, and the authorities came in and got him immediately and charged him with, I think, misdemeanor price gouging. But still, that is what we're hearing. Now, of course, I will say the realtor says that, no, there's been a horrible mistake and there's a reason that the price went up. But sadly for him, the bad impression is out there. And so, yes, not only is there gouging going on, there's also burglaries and looting and people really trying to take advantage. I saw a figure the other day that burglaries, even in my neighborhood, in 7 days, there have been 30, which is almost like a 1.5 increase in our neighborhood, because people are bad out there and they are victimizing the victims.
Real quick, we've got 2 more minutes here, but in 1 minute, Jennifer, tell us the importance of the next election when it comes to insurance commissioner, because obviously that is going to be a huge topic, especially in light of these fires. Of course, it was already a big issue before the fires, but it's going to be paramount and critical going forward. How important is it to get someone with sanity and common sense into that insurance commissioner seat?
It's so important. In fact, these mundane, positions that nobody really thinks about, they're so important. And insurance commissioner is going to be critical, because you will know that State Farm came in a handful of months ago and they canceled everybody's fire insurance. The theory out there, the blame out there, is that Newsom wouldn't let the insurers raise their rates, and that the insurance commissioner was in on this or something, and that therefore a lot of these people are without coverage. It is absolutely critical that we get someone who is rock solid with ethics and knowledge of how you deal with this particular state and its very real risks in an insurance context. People really do have to pay attention to every single one of these offices.
Well, I nominate Jennifer Kennedy for insurance commissioner, so I will back you if you so choose. Jennifer Kennedy, thank you so much for calling in today on Politics in the Pulpit. We're so thankful that you have a home to go to, and Lord willing, we'll talk to you again.
Lord willing, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in today on Politics in the Pulpit on your hometown station. This is Pastor Jerry Cook saying thank you so much. We'll see you this same time next week. Take care.